Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual business sectors, their own individual businesses, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before we start, I'd really like to thank our sponsors, Hayswood's Accountants and Business Advisors. Thanks ever so much, guys. Really appreciate your support. And if you like the show, please like, share and subscribe. So let me introduce you to our fantastic guests. We have today Phil McCormick, owner and managing director of Nicks Timber. They're the Gloucester's oldest independent business. They've been going over 167 years. Congratulations to them. We've got Nicola Bird, founder and managing director of AccXel, the UK's first construction skills accelerator centre in Cinderford. And they're really trying to tackle the shortages within the construction industry. We have Simon Bernstein, Chief Executive of Longfield Hospice, providing specialist palliative care 24/7, 365 days a year. They've got 19 stores. I have over 150 staff, and they do an absolutely amazing job. And then finally, last not least, Richard Cook, who also does an amazing job, leader of Gloucester City Council. Welcome all to Punchline Talks. Right, I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Let's have a look at today's national newspapers. Okay, there's all one big theme going on today. We've got the Tory whip over drunken groups. The Tory has quit, basically. We won't go into detail as that. Actually, Tory Deputy Chief Whip resigns with sexual misconduct claims. The Daily Telegraph, Tory whip quits over drunken groping. The Daily Mail, top Tory resigns after groping 2 men. The Metro, Morgan's teen murder. This is this terrible, terribly sad story of a little lad killed by his stepfather and family. Innocent lost in the house of evil in the Daily Mirror. The Daily Express, how could this tragic little boy be felled so badly? The Times, Number 10 plans VAT cut to ease pain of rising costs. The Eye, Theresa May urges Johnson to ban trans conversion therapy. And the Financial Times, pressure mounts on sterling as trade drops, figures drop to worst level on record. And that brings us very, very nicely back over to you guys who are running your own business, running your own ship. Prices seem to be going up all the time. Phil, welcome to Punchline Talks again. What have you picked out today's papers, please? Well,
minor stuff, really, because frankly, as you've already shown, the major stuff's on every single front page, and it just, the sensationalising of everything is becoming a thing in England now, which I find really odd. I mean, British papers used to report stories that were accurate. Now everything seems to be blown up into some sort of frenzy, however small it might be. But I happened to be at Heathrow Airport yesterday, dropping some family members off who were emigrating to Australia. And there's a little piece in the paper, in the Mirror this morning, about a 22-point action plan on travel put out by the government, which is basically a rehash of what they put out already, which isn't clearly working from my experience yesterday, where you arrived at the airport at 8 o'clock for a 12 o'clock flight. And when we actually left the family members to go into security, I think they had about 45 minutes to catch the plane. And we've been queuing in queues there with a 2-year-old baby in arms since 8 o'clock. So I think the government are going to have to do something about this, something very serious, because I think people are actually getting to the point where they're just not going to travel if they don't. And the economy is clearly in slight free fall at the moment, and we need to do things to make sure it doesn't continue to free fall.
So whose fault do you think it is? Is it the airline? Is it the government?
I think people have been caught out by surprise. I mean, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, everything goes back to COVID, doesn't it? And they obviously let lots of people, even though they were getting large amounts of money on furlough, the airlines, to keep these staff employed, they clearly let a large number of what they would probably term lesser staff go, baggage handlers and checking desk people, and they just haven't got the numbers. You know, it's that was very clear. The airports are clogged by queues, and 30 flights that weren't scheduled to be cancelled, over and above the 10% that already planned to cancel a few days ago, were cancelled on the spot yesterday. And it causes such grief for everybody. But the time it takes to train somebody, get them through the security checks, means that this isn't going to go away very soon. And it's one of those things that I think, you know, people have had a pretty rough time over the last 2 or 3 years, and we're looking forward to getting back to some sense of normality. But there is no sense of normality when it comes to travel at the moment.
Well, British Airways are looking like some of them are going to go on strike, and you talk about the French airlines going on strike. The Spanish are well known for their traffic controllers going on strike. It could be completely.
Well, it was quite clear yesterday from the attitude of the staff, which I have to say I don't actually blame them for, but it was, you know, it was curt. But if you've been dealing with what I experienced yesterday on a daily basis throughout the week, frankly, I wouldn't be there. I don't think. I mean, this is going to be the problem. It's difficult enough dealing with the public at the best of times. We know that from serving the public here. But when they're expecting so much and suddenly get dropped with so little, obviously people are vocal. You know, it's one of those things. You do see the best and the worst of people in an airport, I always think.
Well, yeah, it's a mix of society, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's from cradle to the grave, as they say. Just very quickly, I'm actually surprised how many people are going on holiday. I'm going to quickly go around the panel to see if anybody else is going abroad. Richard, are you going abroad this year?
Yeah, I am, in about a week's time.
Where to, sir?
Well, meeting family over in Hawaii.
Very nice, very nice. Nicola, where are you going this year?
I've just come back. I haven't recently come back from Italy.
Nice holiday.
Yeah, my sister got married in Positano.
Oh, congratulations. Simon, what about yourself?
I was in Porto in Portugal a couple of months ago, and I must admit we were looking at going abroad in the summer. We took one look at what was going on and thought, let's just leave it. Let's just leave it for now. Yeah,
that's exactly Phil, have you actually been away yourself?
I went to Madeira about 3 weeks ago and waited 8 hours to get out of Madeira Airport to get back into the UK. And the Madeira Airport, if you've been there, it closes at 12 o'clock. And everything shuts at about 11, and no flights are supposed to fly after 12. And we were due out at about 6, and we ended up getting out at about 12:30. So they actually broke the law to get us out.
Well, the good news is that WH Smiths have done extremely well, by the way. That was the figures a little while ago. Right, let's move over to Nicola. Nicola, what have we picked out the papers, please?
So this is in the local press. So the Forester, about the forest school being rated inadequate by Ofsted. And I don't know, when I read headlines like that, it's a shame. It is a real shame when.
Which school is it, Nicola?
It's Forest High, so it's the one in Cinderford. So it's, you know, it's our high school here. And from a selfish point of view, from AccXel, you know, it's a shame because we want quality students coming into higher education, into further education. And it's just a shame that they're not having that good experience at school. But then I'm always sort of a glass half full kind of person, and I see, you know, where things like this are occurring, there's always opportunity for, you know, businesses and organisations like myself to look and see what we can do and how we can help, and that's exactly what we are doing.
The complaint I always get is with younger people, it's the soft skills that they don't have, and I know you're going to open your doors very shortly, September. How are you going to help with that? Have you put in place, you know, because some of these guys, I hate to say it, I'm not guys, but got to be quite careful what I say. But yeah, it's the soft skills. Some of them can't pick up the telephone and talk like that. They
a lot of what it was in the report was about behaviour. And you're right. And when we're doing our applications here, we don't assess on aptitude. It is on attitude. You know, can you turn up on time? Can you read a set of instructions before you even get here? Can you shake my hand when you come through the door? Can you look me in the eye when you're shaking my hand? And some of those things that we're helping with, just, you know, for instance, when we're doing our interview process, you know, we've got a small boardroom here, and we've set it up as a boardroom because we want to simulate that environment. Because they are going into work, so we want them to feel comfortable in that environment, but also trying to help them along the way. You know, it's not trying to completely intimidate them, so it's got to be a fine balance. Yeah, and we call them power skills here, and those are about sort of that self-development stuff. It's a lot about mental health. You know, there is a mental health pandemic coming through our younger generation now, where they've had these 2 years of missed education. I've got a 16-year-old daughter who's just finished her GCSEs, And I do feel for 16-year-olds. They haven't got she hasn't got an idea of where she wants to go, and it's a common theme for a lot of young kids we have making inquiries here.
Yeah, and the schools just want to push them into uni rather than apprenticeships. But let's talk about that a little bit later, if that's okay. Have you picked out any other stories, or one more story, please, from the papers?
Well, again, so I always pick out things that align with my own business, and it was this is in the Mirror about the new recruit for the army.
Oh, right. Was it say robots?
Was it actually about the robots could never replace people? And I just like to see the themes. So we go back when we're trying to look at how we're trying to encourage more people into construction. It's quite nice to see how the army recruit, how the RAF recruit, because they have really, really good, strong campaigns. And this is a good one. Is actually saying that robots cannot replace humans, but on the flip side, we're trying to promote digital within construction to make it sound more appropriate, I guess, for the new generation.
Or more sexy. Let's be
more sexy. Yeah.
Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
You're competing with all these other different areas. Construction is a quite a hard industry to get into. It's manual labor. It's outside. It's physical job as well. But there's a lot more to it. I think that's the beauty of the construction industry, isn't it? Far more than just laying bricks and
we were at a school fair, so it was a private boys and girls school, and we were at a school fair, and we were next to the RAF, the army, doctors, barristers, lawyers. But we had the best stand because we had one of our simulators there, and it was jam-packed with girls and boys wanting to have a go and see what the industry has to offer. It's not just all wet trades, and we will be doing degree apprenticeships from next year, September 23. So there's lots of opportunity.
Okay, we can talk about that a little bit later as well. Thanks ever so much for that, Nicola. It brings me very nicely on Simon. Simon, welcome to Punchline Talks.
Thank you, Mark.
First time on the show. Now, I would imagine your demographics of your employees are a lot older. I would imagine you employ a lot of retirees or volunteers within your 19 stores.
We have some older people in our stores, but we have quite a mix of staff across the whole organisation. You'll see our carers need to be fit and active and out there to go out looking after patients, and we have a whole range of age groups of staff working at the hospice and in the shops. We welcome anyone, Mark.
And rightly so too. Simon, so what have you picked out in the papers, please?
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that I've picked out the obituary of Dame Deborah James in The Guardian today. We've all been reading and seeing about her life in the last few days. She died on Tuesday, very sadly, after a long illness with bowel cancer. She was the podcaster of You, Me and the Big C, and she talked really, really openly about her own mortality. And she's been, she was funny, she was sad, she was vulnerable, she was really self-deprecating, but she was also scared, and she wasn't afraid of showing that fear that she had of dying. And I think, reading her obituary and the amazing things she's done in her life, and what is it now, over £6 million that she's raised. I think she's done an amazing job, because she's encouraged us all just to talk about death, to talk about bowel cancer in particular, to think about our own mortality and the fact that it's going to happen to all of us. It is the one inevitable thing for all of us. And I think she's got us to think about what it means to have a good death. And I think she had quite a hard time towards the very end of her life, where she decided, she wanted to stay with her family, but she didn't necessarily want to die in front of her family, her children. And she really struggled for 3 weeks to get care in the community. She didn't want to go into hospital to die. And she ended up going down to her parents' house in, I think it was Dorking in Surrey. And she did eventually get care in the community through another great hospice, the one based near Woking, I think. And she was cared for at home by their hospice at home service. And I think the thing that struck me about, from what I read and saw of Deborah, is that she kind of lived in the moment. she said it how it was. She talked about, you know, looking out for blood in your poo if you have, you know, there's a symptom of bowel cancer and other things. And she lived in that moment. And I think it reminded me of something people probably aware of, Clive James, the TV broadcaster and critic. And I remember he wrote poems when he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And in his very last poem, he said what he celebrated was a world that shone brightly at the last. And I think there's something there that I was reminded of that by Deborah and the way she behaved and how she tended to live in the moment. And we've had people at our hospice, you know, this background behind me shows our garden at the hospice. We've got a garden room in the hospice, and it's quite a lovely quiet place where you can look out over this beautiful garden. And sometimes people just want to sit and watch nature. And we had this woman who had motor neuron disease, terminal illness, and she had been quite an active person, and she was too tired. She didn't want to take part in all the other activities going on at our wellbeing centre. And she just sat there and watched nature outside. And we've got this bush and a bird feeder, and she watched the birds just kind of come out onto the bird feeder and eat. And she just talked about those beautiful moments of, you know, when a bee lands on a flower and just takes the pollen out. And she'd never really stopped before, she told us. She'd never really thought about how beautiful nature was. And it just focusing on being in the moment enabled her to forget her illness and her condition for a little while. I think we forget sometimes how important it is for people to reflect on their lives and to look forward and to try and have a good death and be aware of the good things still in life. And that's what we're all about, helping people to live well.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Simon. I don't know if you know, but my brother died of bowel cancer, and yeah, he had palliative care. Anyway,
sorry to hear that, Mark.
That's okay. It's okay. I've kind of written about it in the past and stuff. So, you know, I'm a big supporter of the hospices, you know, in the county and the cancer charities, as you can imagine. Right. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that. We'll come back to you in a little while, talk about the actual hospice itself. Richard, what have you caught your eye in this week in the papers, please?
Well, it was an article I saw today on the BBC website, and it's something that always hits the news. It's always in the newspapers about a weather event. And at the moment, the weather event is in Europe, and it's a massive heat wave hitting Eastern and Northern Europe. The article goes on to talk about a temperature of 32.5 degrees being the hottest ever north of the Arctic Circle. And if you go further south, 37 degrees in Eastern Germany and Poland, and even further south into Tunisia, 48.7 degrees. Now, these are massive temperatures. I think we've had quite a mild summer so far in this country. I don't think there've been much in the way of extremes. But when those extremes arrive, and we will get hit by those extremes here in this country, they are going to be worse this year than they were last year, worse again than the year before. It's just a constantly rising temperature problem that we have. And it's a global problem, and we've got to start looking at that problem from an international perspective. All of us have got to start taking some action to start to ameliorate the climate change problem. And
the trouble is, though, Richard, you say that, but then in America, just yesterday, the American Supreme Court overturned the fact that the American government could stop the pollution of their big coal furnaces.
I agree. It's just madness. You know, Germany at the moment is so desperate for energy that they're planning to start burning coal again to fire up their electricity power stations. It's just absolute madness. So we've got to start taking this seriously. And I don't think it's being taken seriously at all on an international scale.
No, I think we can all play our own part, isn't it, really, at the end of the day? That's all we can do. Thanks so much for that, Richard. Okay, now let's go back over to you then, Phil. Let's talk about your business. Nicks Timber. So Phil, you've been going over 167 years. I've been to your place lots of times. In fact, I sort of spent a small fortune on wood as I was doing at my station house. So what's it like? Because at the moment, the last week's panel, we were talking about inflation running at 27, 28%. The cost of everything is going through the roof. What is going on in your individual?
Well, I think we're ahead of the curve in as much as we had our inflation during COVID. You know, we were one of the industries that could stay open. Construction was allowed to continue. We were supplying the Nightingale hospitals because they were all timber built. Canada had a really tough COVID and some really, picking up on the climate issue just mentioned, massive fires, took out a lot of mills, took out a lot of log supply. America shop in Canada as a rule, don't shop in Europe. Europe shops in Europe. America came to Europe to buy wood last year for the first time in my working life. As a result of that, the price inflation of wood last year was probably somewhere around 100%. Wow. Within a 12-month period. At the end of that massive run and activity, because COVID produced the perfect storm in everyone was at home, wages were being paid by furlough, it was a hot summer, and everybody did their gardens up. And so the demand in the world for wood was just staggering, and the price just went up and up and up. And I was getting quoted stuff that was literally, that's the price for the next 48 hours. If you don't buy it, it'll be more. So we've been through our ridiculous time up to about November of last year, when all of a sudden the brakes went on. Because we buy forward on contracts, lots and lots of wood arrived in the UK. The demand had gone out. And we had a situation where prices started to drop and the wood on the quay was higher than the price at the mill. So we had to swallow the sort of loss of moving that product through in the belief that cheaper wood would follow. The funny thing is that by the time you get to Russia invading Ukraine and a complete ban on Russian import of material, the price of log is not dropping because Russia probably exports 7 million cubic meters of raw material into the world, predominantly into China, I have to say, but even that is affected by the sanctions that have been put on. What's happening now is we've started this year really not knowing where we were going to be, and the Russia situation, the increase of cost of living, the inflation in all the things that people have to pay in order to live, has created a complete break going on the local economy. B&Q are 25% down on sales. We're seeing a similar situation with regards to retail on this site. People that had planned extensions are putting them off because they don't really know where they are going to be financially with regards to what's going to cost them to live when winter hits next year. So the brakes have gone on in the short to medium term, taking all the demand out of the market. And so timber at the moment is on the flip side of that inflationary cycle and is actually going down month on month at the moment. Now, it's not going to go down to where it was pre-COVID, so it will still be an inflated product, but it's going to come off that 100% inflation and probably end up somewhere around 50. So yeah, it's been a real roller coaster ride. We've had our best trading years in 167 in 2019, 2020, 2021. Who knows what 21, 22 is going to give us just yet. It just means you've got to work a bit harder. But timber is a global product. America have gone back to Canada, but with reduced demand, which means the Canadians are now looking at the UK as a possible dumping site for their excess material. So it's a world product that gets traded around the world. Russia invasion of Ukraine has had a massive impact on that in various sectors. The main thing with the wood going into China, which is where Russia are dumping most of it, is that on the global warming front, everybody likes to buy wood from sustainable resources. It has an FFC, PEFC accreditation. Both the accreditation bodies for timber have withdrew their accreditation from Russian product as part of the sanctions. It's now what they call conflict wood. So although China are importing wood from Russia to make all the Chinese products that come into the UK, they can no longer give it an FFC, PEFC stamp. And as such, most of the garden centres, B&Q, will not sell non-stamped product. So it's a real roller coaster ride of what next, really.
But why don't they do it anyway? Why don't they just
well, that's the problem with China.
Just lie?
That's the problem with China. Their reputation for telling the truth is not great.
No.
And we are trying, I sit on the board of the Timber Trade Federation, TD UK, and we are trying where possible to police this tightly. But from the 13th of July, there will be no Russian import into this country. So the sanctions that were put on when the invasion first took place, we actually haven't really felt yet. You're not going to really start to feel those until the fourth quarter. So as we get near to the end of the year, you'll start to actually really feel that lack of material, lack of product coming in, because anything that was contracted and on water or on contract and actually waiting to be shipped could continue to come in, even though the sanctions were put in place. So, yeah, we you know, it's a crazy year. In fact, we're going to have a crazy 18 months, 24 months. And I think the economy is going to take one hell of a knock as a result of it. And, you know, we don't want to hear the word recession, but this time around, it's not a recession of our own making. It's a recession of a conglomerate of world events that have all come together to create, you know, a one-off unusual environment.
On the back of, you know, 20, 30 years of fantastic business, let's be honest about it. And there's a whole generation that have not seen inflation. Thanks ever so much, Phil. Absolutely fascinating. Nicola, come over to you, because obviously you deal in the construction industry as well. You guys are kind of connected like that. I'm talking to the construction industry all the time. They're saying that prices are going up. Now, obviously, you're in the training side of things. If things start slowing down with that, do you think that would impact you guys?
I don't think on the training side, I think that helps the training side, where businesses have to become more efficient. They want to retain staff. They want to retain their good staff. So, yeah, you know, that they're using that sort of as a carrot. So I don't think we'll see a huge impact on the training side, but I still sit on the board of KW Bell Group, and you know, we can see that we've also got a Part L regulation, building regulations that has been released. It really sort of comes in next year, and we've seen a massive push from the major house builders to try and get as many sort of slabs in as they possibly can before they have to revert to part out regulations. So I think we're going to be flat out now for the next sort of 12 to 18 months, and then we'll probably see that sort of teeter off a bit and calm down, which, to be honest, yeah, with wage inflation, with price inflation, and with the skill shortage, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's. I was talking to one of the leading guys from Kia, and they're doing the forum, as you know, second phase of the forum, and he was saying that they got around 60% of the building, the steel, everything is already paid for, bought, sitting in a warehouse somewhere to build it. You know, it's the only way they can mitigate the increase of cost, really. Tell us quickly about AccXel itself, based in Cinderford. You must be getting exciting, because in September, that's when you're going to have the first tranche of students, isn't it?
Yeah, so our apprenticeships, they start in September. We're already running on adult courses, so we developed a program called Skill Steps. So that helps people progress to the construction industry. Step 1 being apprentice, and step 5 being contracts manager. So we've got about 94 full-time students on that, and that's going really, really well. And it's nice to see people who have been in the industry, say even 20, 30 years, coming back, upskilling, retraining, and effectively creating sort of a community of best practice. And that's really nice to see that going on, because construction industries tend to be quite siloed. They're very competitive, and they just don't share the good things that are going on in their businesses. And it's a breath of fresh air. Yeah,
it's a good chance to actually meet and find out and help each other, isn't it? Rather than just seeing each other as competitors. Now, you had a minister come there recently. Who was it, please?
So that's Lee Rowley. He is the construction minister. He visited us not last week, the week before. Fantastic visit, actually. He was usually here for two hours. We did try and lobby a bit. So this is all about, you know, we have streams and streams of white papers and research papers, thousands of pounds spent on what we need to do for the industry. Yet we're here, and we're still, you know, we've done something about it. G1st, Manchester's government have put money in, AW Bell have put money in, yet, you know, we're not getting one of our our leading representative, CITB, actually coming to see us and saying, oh, can we learn something from you? You know, we've put our money where our mouth is. We're doing something. It's working. You know, our employee partner base have got a combined turnover of about 2.5 billion. You know, that speaks for itself. It's not just one company that thinks this is a good idea. This is, you know, this is a community of companies, you know, within a 60-mile radius of here, large PLCs to major house builders to small micro businesses. So we were trying to tell him that this needs to go further up the food chain. Just use this as an example. We haven't got all the answers, we know that, but we are trying something, and it's much better than bloody writing about it.
I couldn't agree more. And of course, there's always an opportunity where you could grow these and have them all over the country.
100%.
Why not? Why not? Thanks ever so much for that. Looking forward to my visit there very shortly, Nicky. Love to come and see you. Okay, Simon, thanks ever so much for hanging on there. We talked beforehand about your stores. You've got 19 stores across Gloucestershire. I'll be honest with you, I've been to all of them because I deliver the magazines everywhere. I have been to all of them.
They're fantastic, aren't they?
They are actually fantastic, and all the staff are you know, extremely friendly. Can you tell us about the business side of that, please?
Yeah, I mean, just before I do that, Mark, we have a real issue with awareness of Longfield Community Hospice. First of all, not a lot of people actually know what we do, and not a lot of people know where we are because we're tucked just off Minchinhampton Common, near Minchinhampton itself. But what many people think when they hear the word hospice is that we have an inpatient unit with beds, and Longfield has been around for over 30 years. We don't have an inpatient unit, and what I say is that in over 30 years, nobody has ever died at Longfield Hospice. And that's really important. I want people to know that, because when people come to Longfield Hospice, it's a really happy place. We try and look after people from the very point when they're diagnosed, right the way through to the end of their lives. And we also look after their families throughout that process, and also in bereavement as well. We don't have an inpatient unit because most people want to die in their own homes. Like I was saying with Dame Deborah earlier, you know, if they possibly can, they want to be surrounded by their loved ones at home. And we have a team called our Hospice at Home team that go out right across the county providing care in people's homes. And there are other hospices in the county that provide similar care in their pockets of the county. And that's critical. What the shops do, along with our fundraising, is to bring the money in. We're a charity. Only 15% of our income comes from the NHS. All the rest has to be raised from members of the public, either through our 19 shops, which bring in about £2.5 million gross, or our fundraising operation, which brings in about £1 million a year.
Well, okay. I mean, keep everybody in their own homes, though, is quite difficult, because, you know, on emotional side of the people looking after them as well, can't even begin to communicate or to explain what your staff have to go through, let alone the people.
Yeah, it's a challenging job. We you know, train our staff really well, and you have to be a certain sort of person to want to provide that, particularly the end of life care in people's homes. And they go out in pairs. And they have a support network they can ring of registered nurses, and the nurses will go out and do assessments as well. But you're right, it's a very difficult time for both the individual who's dying, but also for their family members. And we're there not just to, you know, provide the care for the person that's ill, but also to look after those loved ones as well. And you should see some of the letters and the flowers and the chocolates that we get from some of those families thanking us for the care that we provide. It's amazing work they do. But we've got real challenges across the county, because we can't possibly meet all the need that exists for people that want to die at home. It's not always possible. First of all, sometimes people do have to go into hospital, and we have to recognise that. But I know that many people who want to die in their own homes can't. They get stuck in hospital. Sometimes they're admitted from care homes because the care home staff are worried about a fall, and then the person goes into hospital and declines in hospital, and they can't get them back out again. And that's really sad. We can't possibly meet all the need. we're actually trying to expand our staffing for the hospice at home teams so that we can provide more care. If you can imagine, we cover an area, we cover Gloucester City with Sue Ryder, Leckhampton, we share that area, and then we really cover all of the area around Stroud, right the way across through Cirencester over to Fairford and Lechlade, right the way down to the south of the county to Dursley and Wootton, across to Berkeley. All those areas is quite a wide area, and if you imagine, we've got teams of 2 staff travelling out to patients, making sometimes 3 visits a day to patients. That's a really wide geographical area to cover. We pay obviously for their travel time. The NHS does not. What the NHS give us only covers about 40% of our hospice at home costs. So there's a big gap to fill, which is why we need to do all that fundraising work. And we're struggling for staffing as well. You can imagine that healthcare, social care staff are the areas, I think the biggest in the economy, I was hearing, where there are the biggest shortages. And it's really tough to get people at the moment because we know there's quite low unemployment.
And also the price of petrol keeps going up and up and up. I mean, that's adding on to your costs.
Yeah, it is. And, the government haven't put up that 45p per mile that you can claim with, without going over that limit and then, incurring tax. And they haven't put that up for, I don't know how long, it must be 10, 15 years or something. And that's really tough on the staff. They're car sharing a lot of the time, so that helps to reduce the cost. And we're thinking of moving to a locality model. So we have teams based more in 4 localities around the county. So that means less travel time and therefore less mileage for our staff. Obviously, we pay them their mileage claims, but it's getting harder and harder with the price of petrol, isn't it?
Okay, just very quickly, how do people make a donation to the hospice?
So if you go onto longfield.org.uk, you can make a donation to Longfield, and we greatly appreciate that. As I said, only 15% of our funds comes from the NHS.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Simon. And we'll be talking again very shortly, aren't we? I think 2 weeks' time, we're going to come back and do a big interview with you as well.
Look forward to it.
Richard. Okay, last night it was the Gloucester Bed Results coming in. Can you tell us what happened, please?
Well, the bid voted to re-elect itself with an 80% by rateable value majority, which is rather high. It really shows how important the bid members themselves feel it is to have a bid that's successful in Gloucester. And the bid does quite a lot of things in Gloucester to attract people into the city centre, and a lot of things that we actually as a city council can't do. We don't have the funds to do that. I mean, we are as a city council doing an enormous amount, as you know. I mean, we're applying for levelling up funding, which is helping the university convert Debenhams into a city centre campus. We're borrowing over £100 million to build out the Forum, which will create another 1,000 jobs in the city centre. And all of those investments will work together to bring more people into the city centre, which is beneficial to all the businesses that are in the city centre. But the icing on the cake, which is the bid, also has to be delivered by the bid members, because we simply can't do everything.
No, it's very, very true. Now, they were not being funny. The flip side was that it appeared that out of the 550 members, and I know that the City Council had a vote of 55 or 56, which is like 10%. Do you think that's fair in a democracy?
Well, we own that property, we pay business rates on that property, and we pay our bid contributions in accordance with the amount of property that we own. I can't see how that's unfair. If we own it and we pay our share accordingly, why is it unfair? Yes, we have an interest as a city council to make sure that the businesses are thriving in the city centre. That's our interest as much as it is the businesses, but we make our own contributions. And even without city council's contribution, there would have still been a sizable majority in terms of keeping the bid.
Don't you think that the police should actually police the city centre rather than having to hire in extra security guards and the businesses paying for that, though, Richard?
Well, we all know that the police can't be everywhere at once. So all by bringing in the CPOs and the police make a contribution towards them, towards the work that they can do. It actually provides additional help, additional security for businesses, and again, it's part of the icing on the cake. As I say, the police can't be everywhere. Resources are stretched wherever you look in the economy these days.
Now, the other good news is that over by the back of Tesco, by St Oswald's, you guys are building some houses there. Can you tell us a bit about that as well? Because that was good news.
Well, we've been trying to put together a land package in that area. Part of the land was owned by the city council, part was owned by Tesco, part was owned by others. And we put together a land package, I think, of about 9 acres. It will ultimately go to rooftop housing, and they're planning to build 300 houses in that particular area. As it's a former, well, it still is a brownfield site at the moment, anywhere that we can build on brownfield sites is beneficial. It gives us the opportunity of filling out the city without taking any of the green space surrounding it.
Now, there's lots and lots of regeneration going on. And I just want to point this out. You know, you've got the railway, you've got the Forum, you've got the back of St Oswald's. I was down by the Gloucester docks. The amount of building going down by Guinness housing. Fantastic flats going down. It's looking really good, isn't it? Let's be honest about it.
Well, I should be positive about it. I have to be positive about it because there is a huge amount of regeneration going on in the city. And it's difficult not to go somewhere in the city where something new isn't being built and constructed. But we must always remember, in building something new, that means probably destroying something old. And we've got to stop having that attitude. We've got to start repurposing what's already there rather than building completely new. I know, you know, I'm guilty as the city council building something new in the Forum, but it would be lovely to look at old buildings and see how we can repurpose them, because 60% of the carbon of a building is from the building. And if you demolish it and rebuild something new, you're just increasing the amount of carbon production in the atmosphere. We've just got to stop doing that.
You've got to look at that new stuff that Vasarian's doing with concrete, mate. Anyway, we're going to run out of time. Unfortunately, I'm massively over already, but we're going to quickly run through what's caught your eye in this week's punchline. But if you don't mind, we'll do it quite quickly. Phil, let's go back to you, please. What have you caught your eye in this week's punchline?
Well, I've let you down, mate, because I haven't seen one, to be honest. I've been soberly busy.
I still love you. I still love you.
Isn't that awful? I would just comment. I'll just quick comment on my co-panel here, because actually everything you say touches us. On the training in the construction industry, we've got exactly the same thing in the timber trade. We've got no youth with knowledge, an ageing workforce, and if we don't actually address that, we've been trying to address that for the last 10 years without much luck from government. And I think we'll have to come down and have a chat, Nicola, about that, because I think there's stuff we can add to what the courses you're doing on product knowledge. And I think by joining forces, we have a better voice politically. I absolutely concur with the City Council on the restoration of keeping the heritage and old buildings in the city. And of course, if you want to build negative carbon buildings, you've got to actually buy more wood, because wood is the only negative carbon building product. So if you want to use steel and concrete, you've got to use more wood in the building. It's the only way we're going to get down to a negative carbon build. And having lived in Mitchelhampton for 28 years until recently, you're quite right that nobody knows you're there, because I didn't. And I feel very embarrassed that I didn't. And we'll look to give you some support going forward.
We've got a fete happening at the end of August, August Bank Holiday Sunday. You're very welcome to come around the corner and join the fete.
Great.
I'll give you a tour, Phil.
That would be great. Look forward to it.
That'd be great. Normally you meet Phil actually in Lidl on Bristol Road, by the way. If you want to catch you. That's normally where I bump into Phil. Anyway, Nicola, what have you caught in this week's punchline, please? Please say that you read some of it.
well, I did, but we've already discussed it. You already stole my thunder, and that was on the price increase. I see you've had an interview with AccXel Construction, so I read that. But yeah, we've already sort of covered it.
I've got two quick stories for you. Okay. I've done my homework. So one story I noticed was about 7Y Energy appointing a new chief executive. He's an old mate of mine, Sandy Hall Ruthven, from an organisation called Creative Youth Network in charity in Bristol, working with young people. He is the new chief exec at 7Y Energy. We had an energy audit done at the hospice recently, giving us some really good pointers for how we could improve our energy efficiency. And Sandy is a great guy, and he's really going to shake it up, and it's great to have him moving to Gloucestershire. The other story that caught my eye was the local journalists striking over pay, and I saw you made a comment on that about, you know, journalists should receive a fair amount of money, but it strikes me, sorry for the pun, that there's a whole range of strikes going on now, and I'm particularly concerned about public sector workers, teachers, doctors, firefighters, postal workers. I mean, you know, and healthcare workers, of course, nurses as well. And it's really, really challenging for organisations like ours trying to recruit staff, and lots of public sector workers. What they've seen over the last 12 years is a massive decline in their real term wages. And, you know, it's just not fair. How we value certain jobs in our society does not seem right to me, and that has to change, and we can't go on with the austerity that we've had. And, you know, it's a different time from the 70s. There's no point comparing it to that. What we've got now is really low unemployment, and I think some of the strike action that people are taking is going to have an impact, and we are going to see some changes, because there's going to be no choice because of the way the economy is going, and we've got very high recession, as Phil was saying, and it's really going to impact, and we need to just recognise people for the jobs they do.
Unfortunately, the private sector hasn't had a pay rise either. The private sector are struggling. They don't have the pensions. They work very long hours. It's a real difficult balancing act, to be honest with you. I think personally, there's going to be, as we head into recession, there's going to be quite large unemployment.
I think we have a society that lives in the day rather than looking ahead, and that's what we, you know, generation before us looked ahead. They worked towards a retirement. They saved for a retirement. They reused stuff. You know, the generation that's on the ground now, it's very much instant gratification. It's very much, you know, everything's what they want to do, what they're entitled to, and I think we've got to change people's mindsets on this. Because by the time you get to needing the services that they won't pay for now, when you are of an age where you need them, realising that you were wrong at that stage doesn't change the way it's working. So I don't quite know how you achieve it. I think the politicians have got equally are focusing on the wrong things at times, but how we as a populace change that mindset, I don't know.
No, I totally agree with you there, Phil. Thanks very much. Richard, what's caught your eye on this week's Punchline?
I saw your article about the Tewkesbury population increase over the last 10 years, 15.8%. So it prompted me to have a look at the figures for everywhere else in Gloucestershire. And Gloucester City had gone up 8.9%. Cotswolds have gone up 9.6%. Stroud 7.4%. This is compared with a national picture of about 6.8%. Over the country as a whole. So it shows that Gloucestershire is growing faster than the rest of the country. Now, I don't know why that is, but the only part of Gloucestershire that wasn't growing at the same rate was Cheltenham, only 2.7%. And I thought, wow, why is Cheltenham not growing when everywhere else is?
They don't have the housing stock. That's the big issue there in Cheltenham, isn't it? Unfortunately,
it's more expensive.
And it's more expensive. Anyway, unfortunately, we're running out of time. So many different places that we've gone with this conversation. We're massively over time. Thank you ever so much. A big thank you to my fantastic panel today. A big thanks to Hazelwood's accountants and business advisors. Thank you for joining Punchline Talks. We'll see you again next week. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.